Right, here we have a query, and with all of these I strongly recommend you pause the video and work out what it's doing. I'm not going to remind you to keep pausing the video. Generally I'll introduce these at the beginning of this lecture, and you should pause, look at it, work it out. So what happens here is that it's giving all of the transactions for all of the employees. Now, does this mean that there are those phantom transactions? You remember that the transaction numbers goes all the way, the employee number goes all the way down to 1. Are those included? The answer is no, because it's an inner join and not a left join. If it was a left join, the number of rows will increase from 2227 all the way up to 2486, which is the number of rows in table transaction. But it's an inner join, and I've specified it expressly. I didn't have to. You can omit the word inner, it's still going to be an inner join. So that's what we've got. So the number of employee numbers start at 123. There's no order by, so it not necessarily in the right order, it just so happens to be in the right order. Now, why won't this work? It won't work because there are employee numbers in table employee and table transaction, and it doesn't know which table we want to take it from, so we've got to specify one. So there we go. Notice I'm using select star just to show you the entirety. Now let's say I wanted just those employee last names which start with the letter Y. Have a pause, think about how you can do this. Okay, so we put in a where which goes before the order. So where the employee last name, and how do we do this? Starts with a letter Y, like single quotation, so an apostrophe Y percentage apostrophe. Percentage meaning 0 or more characters. We had to look at that much earlier in session 2. So there we have the list, only 8 people. Now I'm going to show you an alternate way. Note that the characteristics of the way we've done mean that we have to have this join. Because suppose I just wanted to show just the transactions themselves, but wanted to restrict it to those transactions where the employee last name starts with a Y. That could be that. However, I've still got to do this join with the table employee to find out that the employee last name which is in the table employee starts with a Y. If I didn't have that, I couldn't use this where. If I didn't have the join, I couldn't use the where. So here's an alternate way which doesn't require the join. Right, well here's an answer, so just pause the video and have a look at it. So we have selecting everything from table transaction where the employee number, now which table is the employee number from? Is it from table transaction or table employee? Well, table employee is not even mentioned here, so it's got to be table transaction, so I don't have to say t.employee number. In, remember I don't use is in, just in, and then open bracket, and here's what we do: 126, 127, 128, 129. I've chosen those employee numbers because I know that those employee numbers have got a last name starting with Y. Now, how do I know that that's the case? Because I've used this query. So select employee number from table employee where employee last name like Y%. So let's execute that. And you can see 126, 127, 128, 129. So all I've done is just type those in the in. But by doing that, I've made those fixed. If employee number 128 suddenly gets married and changes his or her last name, it would no longer be valid. If we have a new employee come in whose last name begins with a Y, then it's no longer complete. So we need to change this in so that it's dynamic, so that it looks at table employee and says, these are the employee numbers, can we have the list? And what we can do is just copy and paste this list directly into the where. So I've got rid of all of the numbers. We still have the brackets. And now I can run it. And so what happens is that this subquery runs, gives us a list of 126, 127, 128, 129, and then it substitutes those numbers and runs the outer query. But with the advantage that if I add a new employee number, this list will update. So one of the advantages of subqueries is that I can just highlight the subquery and run it. So I can work out what is happening in the middle and then go to the outer query and run the entirety. So you can build it up. It's making perhaps debugging of code easier. It's making perhaps your SQL writing easier. We don't have to do a join now. So that's the basis of subqueries. So we're going to expand this in the next lecture.